Howdy everyone, it's Sam. Welcome back to the Wobble Enjoy Sports channel. If you're new around here, I hope I can get you to consider to like the content and subscribe to the channel. But if you are a regular around these here parts, thank you very much for the continued support. Wildcard weekend was a little bit of a fizzer, save for the one game. This is going to be an audio only tips episode. I am a bit crook and I am just working me backside off these days. So without further ado, let's get stuck straight in to the divisional round for the NFL playoffs. And the first game emanates from M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore. The Ravens host the Texans. All these odds are thanks to Sportsbet. $1.22 about the Ravens, $4.35 about the Texans. After a couple of massive upsets this past weekend, maybe that's a little bit big on the Texans, but it's great value, isn't it? This will be the 14th encounter ever between these two franchises, and it is Baltimore who have a commanding record over Houston, 11 victories to only the 2 for the Houston Texans. These two sides did meet in round 1 of this season. It was a 25-6 victory, 25-9 victory actually, to the Baltimore Ravens. But the scoreline, while it is big, the numbers, the stats don't really support how big of a lopsided affair this turned out to be. CJ Stroud had 28 completions out of 44 and threw for 242 yards. Lamar Jackson completed at 17 for 22 and threw for 169 yards. He also had 6 rushes for 38 yards as well. So CJ Stroud, he played his ass off in that game. It's just unfortunate that his defense did let him down in the end. These sides have met once in playoff history, and that was in the 2011-2012 divisional round. It took place where? It took place in Baltimore, and Baltimore won on that occasion 20 points to 13. This is the first home playoff game for Baltimore since the 2019-2020 playoffs, but they have not won, the Ravens, a home playoff since the 2012-2013 playoffs. And that year, they took out the Super Bowl that season. Just back to that game as well, it was only 7 points to 6 at halftime. 1 point leaders were the Baltimore Ravens. And the Houston Texans, unfortunately, they have never, ever won in Baltimore. So there is a massive amount of history that is going against the Houston Texans. Now, of the two number 1 seed games that are happening this divisional round, I think the Texans are a bigger sniff of causing the upset. I think Baltimore, they have absolutely creamed teams by and large this season at home. There have been a couple of hiccups, like say for example the Cleveland Browns. But the Houston Texans did defeat the Cleveland Browns rather handsomely last weekend, and I know the Browns are absolutely in the emergency ward for injuries and the like. I think Texans are a sniff. I give them a pretty big chance, and at $4.35, if you want to live extravagantly, I don't blame you. Matter of fact, I encourage you to tip the Houston Texans, because I do think of the two games where the two number 1 seeds who have had the rest off, had the week off, had the rest, they're playing their first game in a couple of weeks. I think maybe the Texans are a bigger sniff, but Lamar Jackson is going to win that MVP this season. CJ Stroud will win the Offensive Rookie of the Year, 100%. So this is a great game. I think this will be a very competitive contest. I think it will finish in the 1-13 range, but I am going to tip the Baltimore Ravens to win this game 1-13. Pretty similar to the one that occurred between these two franchises years ago in the playoffs. I think maybe like a 20 points to 16 scoreline will be the end result in this game in favour of the Baltimore Ravens. The second game of the divisional round in the playoffs this year, is the San Francisco 49ers versus the Green Bay Packers from San Francisco or Santa Clara at Levi Stadium. On Sportsbet, the 49ers are $1.20, the Packers are $4.60. This will be the 73rd encounter between the two in history, and it's the Green Bay Packers who have it 38-33 with one draw thrown in there as well. In playoff history, this will be the 10th time these two franchises have clashed, and the 49ers have the one more victory over the Green Bay Packers. 5-4 is the overall head-to-head record in playoffs. These two sides last met in the 2021-2022 playoffs, and it was the 49ers who traveled to a snowy Green Bay Lambeau Field and won 13-10 in one of the more famous victories that they've had in a decade or so. It was a very, very special victory for the 49ers on that occasion. The Green Bay Packers in playoffs, they have won twice in San Francisco, but they have not done that since the 1997-1998 playoff series. But in regular season competition, the Green Bay Packers have won 2 in a row in San Francisco in the year 2020 and 2021. They have not lost at the venue since the year 2019. So Green Bay, while Jordan Love didn't participate in those games, they've got some good, decent form at Levi Stadium, do the Green Bay Packers. The Packers, probably the upset of the weekend last weekend, bigger than the Houston Texans over the Browns, in my opinion. And to be honest, while they were very good, Jordan Love, he was, as I think we all know by now, he was perfect. He was close to perfect. I think it was more of an indictment on how poor the Dallas Cowboys did in fact play or did not play, however you want to phrase it. In that game, the Packers ended up leaking their most amount of yards defensively for the entire season, leaking over 500 yards in defense. So if they don't show up with the better attitude in defense against the 49ers, they will be picked apart by Brock Purdy and company. But then again, you can make the case the game was wrapped up at halftime. So you can't really, in a way, blame them for taking the foot off the pedal. But the fact still remains they did leak their most amount of defensive yards all season long in that game. But what an unbelievable victory the Packers attained against the Dallas Cowboys at AT&T Stadium. For the 49ers, they're coming off the bye, and they also rested Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, and others in that final regular season game against the Los Angeles Rams. And the 49ers have some really weird form. I don't want to say unconvincing, because I think they've only lost one of their last, or 2 of their last 6 games, or something to that effect. But they've struggled to put away Seahawks, Tampa Bay, Washington Commanders to a certain extent. They leaked 29-30 points against the Arizona Cardinals as well, where they scored 45 points themselves. I did say before, the Texans, I think, have a bigger sniff at causing an upset, but the 49ers, I don't know if they're Super Bowl bound. I don't think they have a spot locked up. I don't think either Baltimore or San Francisco have a spot locked up in the Super Bowl just yet. I really don't. And I think San Francisco are a little bit in lesser form than the Baltimore Ravens, and it shows because they did get pumped by the Ravens on Christmas Day last month. So they do have the number on Green Bay. Green Bay do have recent good form in San Francisco. I'm not sure about the line, if it's going to be a 1-13 or a 14 plus. But I do think that there is something to be said about Green Bay, who they defeated the Vikings and the Bears in the final 2 weeks of the regular season. They did come up against the Cowboys. You can only beat what's in front of you, and Dallas didn't show up. But the previous games, they lost to New York Giants. They lost or they only just won against the Carolina Panthers as well in a high-scoring affair. I think, without being disrespectful, I do think they came up against teams that either choked or they just were completely out of steam for the season. And I'm talking about the Vikings in particularly, and the Bears as well. And the Bears are #1 overall draft pick. I am going to tip the San Francisco 49ers. I'm going to be a prick. I'm going to say 14 plus. But I don't think it will be an extravagant 14 plus. I do think there's a couple of touchdowns in the Packers. I think the 49ers, couple of scorelines, especially in recent times, have shown that defensively they're not quite there yet. But I'm going to tip the 49ers 14 plus. The third matchup of the divisional round in the playoffs this season is from Ford Field. The Detroit Lions host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. On Sportsbet, it is the Lions who are $1.34. The Bucks are $3.30. This will be the 62nd match in history between the two. The Lions have the overall head-to-head record at 32-29. These two sides have met once in playoffs. That was in the year 1997. They played in Tampa Bay, and it was the Bucks who won on that occasion. However, in much more recent times, these two sides did clash earlier this season in Tampa Bay, and it was Detroit who won 20 points to 6. As a matter of fact, they have had a bit of the wood over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa Bay. This will be, however, the first trip to Ford Field for the Buccaneers since the year 2020. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have not lost in Detroit since 2014. 10 years since they have lost in Detroit. There have been 2 games in Detroit in that time. Focusing on the Bucks first of all, they were pretty impressive, man. Not a whole lot of retraction from the team that they belted the week before. During the game, Philadelphia. They offered absolutely nothing. Philadelphia, they were cooked, and now they are officially gone. But Bucks, credit to them, man. They did come out firing. Baker Mayfield and the offense just were clicking as fast and as well as crisp as we have seen in plenty of weeks, man. The scoreline did surprise me, man. I did tip Philadelphia, but I thought if Tampa Bay would win, it wouldn't be 32-9. The week before, they only just won against the Panthers 9-0. The week before, the Bucks didn't score a hell of a lot of points. So credit to them. They did really well. Philadelphia, though, they were absolutely busted. Absolutely nothing on offer. The Detroit Lions, they won the game of the week last weekend. Their first playoff victory in over 30 years. Just incredible. Just an incredible scene Ford Field was, and they get it again. They get another opportunity in Ford Field to try and advance to the NFC Championship game, and they were fantastic in that first half. The Detroit Lions and Los Angeles Rams, they did not play poorly in that first half at all. It's just the Lions were just so lasered in, zoned in, that their first half really set up that victory for them. But they did only score just the field goal into that second half. So you can sort of forgive them for that. It was everyone's just about, besides Jared Goff, just about. It was everybody's first playoff game. It was the franchise's first playoff game in years and years and years. So you can sort of forgive them for sort of accidentally taking the foot off the pedal. They didn't choke, obviously, but they nearly lost it in the end. They only won by the single solitary point, 24 points to 23. But now that monkey's off the back, and they're hosting another playoff game, consecutive weeks, by the way, Tampa Bay, their form over the entire season, you would say, is maybe just a smidge, like the barest of margins, above average, just above average. They only just won their title, their divisional title. The Detroit Lions, they did belt them earlier this season. They take them on again, and I think it spells bad news for the Bucks. I think they do have a touchdown in them as well, but I think the Detroit Lions will win this game 14+, and they will advance to the NFC Championship game, where whoever they take on, they are a massive, massive sniff against. And the final game of the divisional round weekend emanates from Highmark Stadium in Buffalo, New York. The Bills versus the Chiefs. On Sportsbet, it is the Buffalo Bills who are the favourites at $1.67, whereas the Chiefs are $2.21. That is already not too bad a value on the Kansas City Chiefs. This will be the 55th match between these two, and it is Buffalo who have the overall head-to-head record at 29-24, with one draw thrown in there as well. This will be the 5th ever playoff game between these two franchises. The Chiefs have the record in that department, where it most counts 3-1. This will be the 3rd time in Buffalo that these two sides have clashed in playoffs. The first time around, the Chiefs won in 1967. They have, as a franchise, they have travelled to Buffalo and defeated the Bills when it comes to playoffs. And the last time that they won in Buffalo for playoffs was in the year 1992. But it's all the action has been at Arrowhead Stadium since the year 2021. There has been 5 straight games played at that venue, and the Bills lead that statistic at 3 wins to 2 victories. But those 2 victories did, again, I reiterate, they did come in the playoffs for the Chiefs, where it mattered most. The Chiefs, they last travelled to Buffalo in the year 2020. They won on that occasion. The Chiefs, they have not lost in Buffalo since the year 2012, and there have been 3 games in between 2012 and this weekend as well. So they are not too shabby when it comes to Buffalo. When you think about that, everyone's hyping up that finally, and it is true, but finally, the Bills, they get the Chiefs in Buffalo. This is a grudge match. This is the game of the weekend. This is going to be hotly anticipated. Will Taylor Swift be there? Who knows? This will be the first road playoff game for the Kansas City Chiefs since the 2015-2016 playoffs, where they travelled to Gillette Stadium and lost to the New England Patriots. So I look at their overall road record in playoffs. This will be their 17th road playoff game, the Kansas City Chiefs, and their record is 6-10. 6 wins, 10 losses. So what's their record like this season, the Chiefs, on the road? Their record is not too shabby. They have only lost the 2 games on the road this season, and they were random ones at that. That was to the Denver Broncos and the Green Bay Packers. Also, speaking of earlier this season, the Chiefs and Bills, they did fight each other midway through the year, or midway through the season, back in October off the top of the dome. And it was the Bills who won at Arrowhead Stadium, but only by the barest of margins. Kadarius Toney nearly scored one of the touchdowns of all time after a lateral pass by Travis Kelce that would have won them the game by and large, with, I think, maybe only a few seconds left on the clock. Again, off the top of the dome, but Kadarius Toney was offside, and I think that was the right call. So in saying all that, this will be the best. This will be the closest game of the weekend. This is a huge game, and again, I reiterate in a different way though, this will be Patrick Mahomes' first road playoff game in his entire career. So this is another level. This could be another attribute or victory to add to his resume. This is something that he's never experienced. It is something that he is yet to achieve in his career win a road playoff game. This is going to be intense. It is hard to pick, but I am going to tip the Kansas City Chiefs in this game. I don't quite trust the Buffalo Bills. As exciting as Josh Allen is, they unfortunately suffered another couple of key injuries, both defensively and offensively, this past weekend against the Steelers. And that Chiefs defense is nothing to sneeze at. Offensively, there does still need to be a bit of work. They only scored just the 1 or 2 touchdowns in the win against Miami. The Chiefs, they played in the cold. They're traveling to Buffalo. The cold will not affect them. I think the Chiefs go to Buffalo and they heap a bit more misery on the Buffalo Bills, who have had a pretty lucky, or they've just had a really weird ride in 2023. They sort of have come from the clouds to nab the 2nd seed. I don't think they've played like a 2nd seed all season long. And I think the Chiefs are going to go up there with their defense, and they're going to beat the Buffalo Bills up there in an absolute grudge match, in an absolute beauty. Yo, that's it for me, guys. Thank you very much for your continuous support over these recent times. We've only got a few more weeks to go until the Super Bowl arrives, and at the moment, I don't think anyone's locked in or assured their spot in the big dance. I hope, if you are new around here, I hope I have convinced you to like the content and subscribe to the channel. And I hope your team wins this weekend. For me personally, I'm behind the Detroit Lions up until I got to decide which other bandwagon I got to hop on. But go Detroit for this weekend, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you. Take care. Adios.